Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Tennessee. Hope everyone is well. It's great to see everybody's faces pop up on the screen. Hi. Welcome. I'm Julie. I'm here from Lifetime Arts. We would love for you to just first do an intro of yourself through the chat, if you would, so we have a sense of everybody that's in our Zoom room. So you can go ahead and, yeah, Galia just put the instructions in the chat too. Go ahead and put your name, your art form or art forms that you work in, visual arts, performing arts, literary arts, whatever your forms are, your specific location where you're calling in from today. And if you wouldn't mind sharing something beautiful that you see out the window, or if you don't have a window in your space, maybe something beautiful in your space that you'd like to share with us, we can all kind of connect and get a sense of everybody here. We can't all be in the same physical room, but we are in the same Zoom room. Michelle's already jumping in, dance artist here. She's calling in from Nashville and she sees some fresh flowers. It's lovely. I'm Julie. I'm a theater artist. I'm calling in from West Orange, New Jersey. And from my window behind these trees, I can see Manhattan. Annie's a theater maker calling in from Brooklyn, looking at some honeysuckle out her window. Denise, Nashville as well. Cardinals feeding their fledglings. That's a beautiful word and image. Hi, Ian. Ballad singing and clogging. Great. Calling in from Johnson City. I know Johnson City well, actually. And also honeysuckle. Great. It's nice, the honeysuckle in Tennessee. Sarah is a music artist calling in from Nashville. A cool overcast day out the window. That's nice. Over here in New York, it's over 90 degrees today, I think. And Jade's calling in. She's my co-trainer from Lifetime Arts. Chinese brush painting is her art form, and she's looking out the window and seeing some beautiful neighbors. Great, so keep those coming. I see Mary and Ashley, Sarah, the roses are in blooming, beautiful. Rita's looking at some red birds in her yard. So check those out and just get a sense of just the diversity of art form we've got. Oh, Jen, I'm jealous. She's calling in from Key West on vacation. If only we could all be there on the beach. Beautiful. Wonderful. Well, keep those intros coming. It's just great to know where everybody is. Kristen had some sheep in her field and a birdhouse full of baby chickadees. This is great. We're going to have some more time to get to know each other over the next few days. But this is just a great way to start getting a sense of everybody that's in the space. I also wanted to make sure that you have for the training today paper or a notebook and a pen or pencil available. And I will say, even if you have like a marker, that will be useful too for an exercise that we'll be doing in just a little bit. So take a second to gather those things if you need. And while you're doing that, I'm going to have my code trainer, Jade Lamb, is going to take us through sort of a Zoom orientation of the way that we'd like to work online over these next 3 days together.
Jade, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Julie. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's Creative Aging training. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few housekeeping items. We ask for your full active participation and engagement during the session, just as if we were able to be together in person. To fully participate in today's session, here are a few things for you to know about the Zoom platform. Please note that these apply if you're using Zoom on a computer. These functions may appear differently if you're accessing the training via phone or tablet, and you may not have all the options we mentioned. Lifetime Arts will be sharing our screen, like you are seeing now. For the best view during today's session, we recommend you use the side-by-side viewing mode. You can find this by clicking the View option drop-down menu at the top of your screen, next to the lime green button saying, "You are viewing Galia's screen." Click the drop-down arrow and select side-by-side mode. In this mode, you should be able to adjust how big the slide is and have the option to make it smaller so you can see people's videos and vice versa. You can change the view of who you see in this mode by selecting either gallery view or speaker view on the top right of your screen. We ask that you keep yourself muted unless you're otherwise directed to eliminate distractions and any background noise. We ask that you keep your camera on so we can see one another as if we were in the same room. To adjust either of these settings, you can click on the microphone or camera icons on the bottom left of your screen. A slash through the icon means you're either muted or your camera is off. We also ask that you take the time right now to rename yourself on Zoom so people know your full name and the art forms you work in: visual art, performing, literary, etc. You can also add your preferred pronouns if you wish. You can do so by clicking on the Participants tab and clicking on the button More to the right of your name. You can see a drop-down menu with the option Rename. Please go ahead and take a moment to do that now. If you have any questions or comments during the session at any time, please feel free to type your comments in the chat function to everyone. You'll find that chat icon at the bottom of the screen in the middle of the toolbar. A staff member will see the chat and will do the best to read aloud your question or call on you during the Q&A portions of the session as time allows. Please note that throughout the 3 days of training, breakout room group discussions will be used often. So please be ready to fully participate. And there will also be opportunities for you to move and stretch. So be sure you have clear room around you if you choose to join in with those. If you would like to save the chat from today's session, you can do so by opening the chat box and clicking on the 3 dots on the bottom right. Select Save Chat, and the entire chat will be saved to your computer. Finally, if you want to see closed captioning, press on the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and turn it to show. If you have any trouble seeing the CC button in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom window, try expanding to full screen mode and hovering your pointer at the bottom of your window. Your toolbar should pop up and the CC button should appear to the left of your reactions button. Thanks for fully participating in today's remote trainings. If you run into any technical issues, please message Galia Eden directly through the chat. And please have a paper, a notebook, and pen or marker available for some activities today.
Great, thanks, Jade. And Galia just put her info in the chat so you can directly chat her with any tech issues as we're moving through. We want to make sure everybody can see and hear us and in the way that works best for you. So again, I'm Julie Klein. I'm the Education Associate here at Lifetime Arts. I'm here with co-trainer Jade Lamb, who is also a creative aging teaching artist in her own right. And then we are also joined by Director of Education from Lifetime Arts, Annie Montgomery. We have 2 facilitators with us today that are creative aging trainers, Dane Stauffer and Raina Santos. And finally, our virtual training producer, who just put her information in the chat, Galia Eden, is running everything on the back end. So that's all of us. You can chat any of us at any time with any questions. But as Jade said, also just questions that come up and thoughts that come up through the training, we welcome you putting those into the chat for everyone. And we specifically collect those and we'll address them later in our Q&A section. I also wanted to introduce Ann Brown, Associate Director of Grants from the Tennessee Arts Commission, who's just going to give us a welcome today. Hi, Ann.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Wonderful. Well, it's great to see so many familiar faces here today, as well as some new artists and organizations. I'm Ann Brown, Associate Director of Grants for the Tennessee Arts Commission. And the mission of our agency is to cultivate cultivate the arts for the benefit of all Tennesseans and their communities. And when we say all Tennesseans, we mean people who live in rural and urban settings in all 95 counties of the state, children and youth during both in-school and out-of-school time, BIPOC communities, people with disabilities, active duty military veterans and their families. And the reason you are all here today, programs and services for people.
And I'm sorry, your audio is fading in and out a little bit. It sounds like it's coming in when you start a sentence, but then it's sort of fading.
Okay, I'll try to lean in closer to the computer. Can you hear me better?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Great, thank you. So we are thrilled to be partnering with Lifetime Arts as part of our Creative Aging 2 initiative, which will help increase the provision of arts programming for older adults in Tennessee. I want to say thank you to Lifetime Arts for working with the Arts Commission to provide this invaluable service. We are also excited for all of you to become part of our first Creative Aging Tennessee teaching artist roster. Some of you know the commission has housed another teaching artist roster for years, really geared though toward instruction for pre-K through 12 students. We are thankful for a grant from the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, which makes it possible to offer training focused on sequential arts learning for older adults. And then I wanted to say thanks to all of you for your commitment to this vital work, and especially to Kim Johnson, who works each day to increase access to the arts for all Tennesseans. With Kim's vision, we are able to support creative aging work that continues to grow in the state. I also wanted to thank our arts education staff. We have 2 new members who've joined the commission, Alicia Fuss as Director of Arts Education and Michelle Sipes, Arts Learning Specialist, for their assistance and arts learning insight throughout this process. And finally, I hope the next few days of training are valuable to all of you. And if the commission can be of any assistance, just please feel free to reach out and let us know. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anne. And yes, we have to, of course, give a shout out to Kim, who's been our on-the-ground partner in this and will continue to be. So it's just already been a great collaboration with the Tennessee Arts Commission, and glad to finally begin with all of you. So over the next 3 days, we're going to be covering a lot of ground. Overall, our training goal is really to introduce you to the creative aging field. Our agenda for today, specifically day 1, is posted here on the slide. And our goals for this first day of training is that you're going to be introduced to the creative aging field. We're going to really spend some time to analyze ageism and its possible impact on program design and delivery. We're going to talk a lot about older adult learning principles, and we're going to learn how to structure lessons that really meet the needs and can engage the creative spirit of older adults. So that's time for today. Just a preview of our next 2 days. Tomorrow, our focus is really, we're all actually going to take part and experience an online creative aging class. And then we're going to discuss program design for these kinds of programs. And then on Wednesday, we're going to talk about partnering with older adult communities when we're developing these kinds of arts programs. And we're going to spend some time really envisioning our own creative arts programs and talk about curriculum development. So first, we're going to really dive in with exploring ageism, just to again, really generate dialogue and think about how the potential impact of ageism on program design. So I want you to take a moment and check in with yourself right now. Go ahead and put your feet on the ground, sit comfortably in your chair. You might even want to, gaze away from the screen for a second. We get so tied to the screen on these Zoom calls, and just check in with yourself and in your body. What age do you feel like today, in this moment, on the inside? What feels to you like your internal age? Just check in with yourself. Maybe something, it might be physically, it might be mentally, emotionally. What feels like your internal age in this moment? And as you start to come to a number, I want you to take a piece of paper or your notebook And if you got that marker, this is the time to use it, or a pen or a pencil, and write that number down as large as you can on that piece of paper. What feels like your internal age just today, right now? So when you've done that, you write mine down. Once you do, go ahead and hold your number up to the screen. Great. And Galia stopped sharing, so we should all be able to see these numbers. Great. I see Jade says 30 today. Oh, Rhino, will you put yours a little more forward? It's getting caught in the virtual background. Oh no, I can't see it. Dane says 42. Oh, there, Rhino, 33. I guess you put it closer to you and then I can see it. Denise, I see 50. A lot of 30. A lot of folks feeling like they're in their 30s today. That's great. Sarah, I see a 27. Rita, 42. Make sure I can see my, right. And if you don't have your camera on, maybe you can put that into the chat. Katie, I see a 20. Denise, 50. Okay, wonderful. Great. So let me ask Mary. You said 35 today. Mary, I'm saying 35 or 45. Oh, I see. 35 to 45. 35 to 45. Mary, would you mind unmuting yourself and telling me why those numbers? Why two numbers today? What was going on for you? Yep. No, take your time. There you go. Hi, Mary.
Yeah, I just.
Oh no, you got muted again. Oh no, Mary, you're muted again. Mary, I missed that whole fabulous thing you just said.
All right, 35 just popped into my mind for some reason, but that's a lot younger than I am. So then I said, well, maybe somewhere between 35 and 45.
And what do you felt 35 today? Why that number?
No, I think that to me, that's sort of like when you're an adult, you're not like a real young adult, kind of unsure of yourself, but you're not like aging yet either in a sense. So it's just like, to me, that's just sort of like adult and kind of have it together, but you know, not worrying about aging yet. And so that just sort of popped.
I hear you. I also hear that you had an instinct, you had a number, and then you said, but wait, that number's too young, maybe. Or
yeah.
That you sort of, so that's so interesting. You had an instinct, but then you had sort of a judgment about that the number wasn't the right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. So I think we all have some of those judgments, right? Great. Thanks for sharing. Sean, Claire, I wanted to call on you. What number did you put up, and would you mind chatting about it?
There we go, unmuted.
Yeah, hi Sean.
I put up 32. That was kind of a number that, simply because I tend to take pretty good care of myself. Usually I'll feel like I'm in my 20s, but I've had a really long weekend, 9 performing services in the space of just over 3 days, and I feel a little older today.
You're placing yourself more at 32, feeling old. That's older for you. Yeah, for you, that's older. That's great. That's great. Olive, may I call on you? Would you show your number again, or tell me again what that was? 60. Yes, I'd love to hear. Why was that your number today?
Well, I'm older than 60, but this is a challenge with Zoom.
Yes.
Making sure I was connected. A little nervous about that. Yeah. Okay. And so something about that, maybe sort of anxiety or concerns. Yeah, because it's not something I do often. I mean, I do use it, but not that often. Yeah.
So something about engaging in this way made you feel 60, or that said to you 60?
Oh yeah, it's like a new beginning. I mean, when I hit 60, I had a retrospective art show. I sold a lot of work of art, and then moved in to being a professor of art. So that changed. Yeah.
Right. Great. So this is wonderful. So CTU, in your experience of that age, was a real place of discovery, and a place, it's sort of like a new precipice for you with 60.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's great. So I just want to call that out because that's so subjective, right? That's based on your own experience of that age, because you've been through that age and that was what happened to you during that age.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think we all often have very different associations with different ages based on our experience of actually going through that age. And then I think ages that we are not, sometimes we just project ideas, right? We might just think that what 60 means is this, what 100 means is this, and that's sort of just an invention of our own mind, right?
Right.
Great. So we love to start with this question to start getting us thinking about some of these associations that we have with age that really are totally subjective, totally our own, or often invented, or sometimes stereotypical, right? What 35 means to you is different than what it means to me. And also we might feel differently at 9 a.m. in the morning. I'll feel like a different age than we do at 3 p.m. Or as Sean was saying, after a very busy weekend, you know, it feels a little more like 32 than 25, you know, right? So these things are ever changing, super fluid. So just wanted to start getting us thinking about this. Okay, and Jade's going to take us into the next part of this exercise.
Now, I'd like you to write into the chat any ageist things you've heard or said yourself. Cliches about age, young or old. For example, oh, you look so young. Or age before beauty. So take a moment to write into the chat any ageist thing. I'm looking at the chat right now. Annie said age before beauty. Julie said old people are so cute. Sarah said, oh, you can't do that. You're too old. Yep, I heard that before. Mia said, hi, sweetie, honey. Now. Yali said, you're too young. Jane, wow, I have a lot of responses to you. These are very good examples.
Oh,
Alicia
Jane
said,
says, you look so young for your
lines.
age. Have you had work done? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Look at these lines. Elaine said, you look good for your age. Raina said, the outfit is too young for you. Jonathan said, young and dumb. Wow. Yeah. Darren said, I'm 45 and I'll say, I feel so old. I have a lot of response keep coming.
I see Alicia said, oh, let me do that for you, right? So folks coming in and, oh, let me help you. That could be very ageist.
Katie said, I'm no spring chicken.
Again, the cute word comes up. Oh, you teach seniors? How cute, right? So even cliches that are positive, I mean, I don't know if that's, I guess it's kind of positive, but it's not, it's someone trying to be positive, right? But it's still completely a cliche. It's still completely generalizing a whole group as cute or wise or whatever. Good. Any more good ones here? They're all great. I could never tell you're that age from the neck down.
I have a product that can help you look younger.
Right. So products and right, there's a whole, and as Ashton said in the video that we're going to watch a little bit of or did watch, the whole much of the cosmetics and wellness industry is prompted by a lot of ageism, right? It's all downhill from here. Yes.
Mm-hmm. When you're older, you understand. Mia said that.
Yes, and so important that ageism goes both ways, right? Our assumptions about the young and our assumptions about the old, all of these things in quotation. You're too young to feel like that. Yep, thanks, Sarah. Great, well, Jade's gonna take us more into this idea of ageism.
Sure. From the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, ageism is prejudice or discrimination against a particular age group, and especially the elderly. This section will be our opportunity to explore what ageism means in our life. But first, we're going to hear from Ashton Applewhite about ageism, and later we will work together to define and talk about its impact. Ashton Applewhite is the author of This Chair Rots, a manifesto against ageism and a spokesperson for a movement to mobilize against discrimination on the basis of age. In 2016, she joined the PBS site Next Avenue as the Influencer of the Year for her expertise on ageism. Let's hear what she has to say about growing older. A reminder, if you put the share screen in side-by-side mode, you can adjust the size of the video so you can see it bigger, using the bar between the video and participant videos.
What's one thing that every person in this room is going to become? Older. And most of us are scared stiff at the prospect. How does that word make you feel? I used to feel the same way. What was I most worried about? Ending up drooling in some grim institutional hallway. And then I learned that only 4% of older Americans are living in nursing homes, and the percentage is dropping. What else was I worried about? Dementia. Turns out that most of us can think just fine to the end. Dementia rates are dropping too. The real epidemic is anxiety over memory loss. I also figured that old people were depressed because they were old and they were going to die soon. It turns out that the longer people live, the less they fear dying, and that people are happiest at the beginnings and the ends of their lives. It's called the U-curve of happiness. And it's been borne out by dozens of studies around the world. You don't have to be a Buddhist or a billionaire. The curve is a function of the way aging itself affects the brain. So I started feeling a lot better about getting older, and I started obsessing about why so few people know these things. The reason is ageism, discrimination and stereotyping on the basis of age. We experience it anytime someone assumes we're too old for something, instead of finding out who we are and what we're capable of, or too young. Ageism cuts both ways. All isms are socially constructed ideas: racism, sexism, homophobia, and that means we make them up, and they can change over time. All these prejudices pit us against each other to maintain the status quo, like auto workers in the US competing against auto workers in Mexico instead of organizing for better wages. We know it's not okay to allocate resources by race or by sex. Why should it be okay to weigh the needs of the young against the old? All prejudice relies on othering, seeing a group of people as other than ourselves, other race, other religion, other nationality. The strange thing about ageism, that other is us. Ageism feeds on denial, our reluctance to acknowledge that we are going to become that older person. It's denial when we try to pass for younger, or when we believe in anti-aging products, or when we feel like our bodies are betraying us simply because they are changing. Why on earth do we stop celebrating the ability to adapt and grow as we move through life? Why should aging well mean struggling to look and move like younger versions of ourselves? It's embarrassing to be called out as older until we quit being embarrassed about it. And it's not healthy to go through life dreading our futures. The sooner we get off this hamster wheel of age denial, the better off we are. Stereotypes are always a mistake, of course, but especially when it comes to age, because the longer we live, the more different from one another we become, right? Think about it. And yet, we tend to think of everyone in a retirement home as the same age, old. When they can span 4 decades, can you imagine thinking that way about a group of people between the ages of 20 and 60? When you get to a party, do you head for people your own age? Have you ever grumbled about entitled millennials? Have you ever rejected a haircut or a relationship or an outing because it's not age appropriate? For adults, there's no such thing. All these behaviors are ageist. We all do them, and we can't challenge bias unless we're aware of it. Nobody's born ageist, but it starts in early childhood, around the same time attitudes towards race and gender start to form, because negative messages about late life bombard us from the media and popular culture at every turn, right? Wrinkles are ugly. Old people are pathetic. It's sad to be old. Look at Hollywood. A survey of
So now we're going to have further discussions in breakout rooms about the video and your perspectives on aging and ageism.
All right, I'm going to put you in the breakout rooms now.
All right. Everybody back? Hi, everybody. Whoop, let's come back to the main room. I always know the conversation is so big. Forget. Oop, I'm just hearing some background noise. We never quite get quite enough time, but really it's just the beginning of thinking about a lot of these issues, because as you engage in creative aging work, these are going to come up again and again. You know, and I think we really need to start the exploration with ourselves and really be be searching about our own ideas, because those are going to show up in the classroom, right? As we all know, our full selves show up with anything that we engage with. And so it's important to start with us. So I just wanted to have folks, our facilitators, do a quick share out, really 1 to 2 things. We don't have a ton of time to share out from your group, the biggest takeaways. So Aid, could I have you begin?
Hi, what a wonderful conversation. Oh, did you say Dane?
I said Jade, but go ahead.
Oh,
Dane.
Jade. Okay, we rhyme.
Similar.
Jade.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sorry about that. I heard Dane too, but
Sorry.
I'm ready to share. So there are a couple musicians in our group, and one of the things that they experience ageism in the music world is that, you know, sometimes people just want young people, but it goes both ways. Sometimes for certain positions, they want older people. And if someone looks young, then they will like, can this person do this? But Sean was saying that for himself, he was trying to focus on the skill of that individual instead of looking at how much experience or how that person looked like. There are a lot of behind the scene work that you don't even know who that person is. And that was a great idea because you don't judge. It's behind the scenes. So that was one examples that we talked about.
Great, thank you so much. And now Dane with a D.
Thank you. A lot of thoughts came up about vulnerability and creating a safe space in which people feel vulnerable. How do we recognize reality and recognize change, and how can change be a catalyst in your day rather than something we fight against? And also how several art forms, performing arts, dance, etc., have ageism baked into them. It's just a part of the world of it. But we're finding that as we teach this age group, sometimes it's liberating, because when you're not tied to an ambition to become a dancer, but you just want to do the art form because it's expressive and it's fun, and it really does create a different atmosphere that can be liberating for people.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Dane. I love that. I haven't heard that articulated that way. Thank you. Raina, do you mind sharing from your group? Oh, Raina, you're muted.
There you go. Got it? Can you hear me? Thank you. No, we actually had a really interesting conversation that got really intense about the actual getting a real clear definition. Jonathan wanted, we began this conversation about getting a real definition of ageism, and, you know, really being encouraged and investigating deeper outside of, you know, the small snippet that we got about what is ageism, you know, between personal and structural. But then also some of our participants experience ageism themselves, you know, by being called sir, not really feeling that that pertained to them, that was something that was meant for much older people. And Sarah really made a wonderful point about how ageism, how any ism is really internalized. And in the interactions with older people, one of the most important things is to really treat them the same as you would anyone else. And so really talking about a deeper understanding of ageism, to really be able to hold on to that as we move forward in the training. And then also being able to understand and move forward with the idea of this level of internalization by our population that we're dealing with.
Great, thanks, Rhina. Really important. I know there was some technical difficulties with Annie's breakout room, but I think Galia, you're going to take a share out for their group.
Yeah, so first of all, just shout out to Annie's group for continuing the conversation even after Annie's internet conked out. When I got in, Denise was still carrying on the conversation around ageism. So it seemed like they really facilitated their own group, which was awesome. So I came in just right at the end, and we talked just a little bit about how art and art making and art learning can combat ageism. And Dee Dee mentioned a sense of play, which I loved because, you know, I think when we think about art in general, no matter what age we are, there's this sense of it being a really serious craft. And sometimes we lose that sense of play or just that feeling of just growing with it and with the art form. So I loved that, and just combating limitations on ourselves in general. And then Alicia talked about art as discovery and how it influences overall wellness and creates more opportunities for change and wellness and learning new things, which is great for overall health. So yeah, it was great to jump in and get those last moments of reflection. So thank you for that.
A good conversation despite technical challenges.
Yes, definitely.
Our group also, I just wanted to share, you know, great, wonderful conversation overall. And we also ended in a lot of wonderful points about the power of art making and learning to combat ageism. And one was that Elaine talked about just any creative endeavor is really problem solving, and it's that problem solving that keeps the brain active. And she's noticed in her creative friends that sort of aliveness and activity, and she wants to spread the gospel of creativity to everyone she knows. And Mia spoke about, you know, those interpersonal connections that really come from engaging in the arts. That, if I may share, Mia, after her father died, that she and her mother took a pottery class together, and it really was that community experience that seemed very important in their healing process. And Bailey had a wonderful point that really learning and mastering an art form, or really anything, is a great equalizer across all ages. Even if you have young people that start to engage in an art form, then they can have conversations with adults about that same thing. And I thought that was a wonderful point, that it really, there's really she said, a commonality in the mastery of an art form. And I love that. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. We're going to be doing more breakout rooms through the next 3 days. And as I said, it's really the beginning of the conversation, and the conversation with yourself, truly, about this topic. But we are going to take a 5-minute break. The way the break's going to work is Galia is going to play some music. And actually, after 3 minutes, you have the option of coming back in. Galia will take the music out, and you'll have a little stretch break for 2 minutes led by Jade. So 5-minute break, but if you want the stretch break, come back in 3 minutes. Thanks so much.
Okay, so I hope everybody's more refreshed. Get ready for the next section. Okay, so now we're going to dig into the creative aging arts education model so that you have a clear understanding of the goals for these type of programs for older adults. Why is everybody talking about aging? Well, worldwide, the population is aging due to falling fertility rates. People are having fewer children, and rising longevity. Put simply, people are generally living longer, healthier lives. Although we want to acknowledge that COVID-19 is projected to reduce life expectancy for older adults by about 1 year, according to the official journal of the National Academy of Sciences. Overall, though, according to the US Census Bureau, starting in 2030, older Americans will make up 21% of the population, up from 15% today. And by 2034, the number of older adults aged 65 and older will outnumber those under the age of 18. This demographic shift is not a temporary situation, but is a permanent shift towards an older population. Additionally, we can go to the next slide. Additionally, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, as well as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals constitute a significant and rapidly growing portion of the older adult population in the US. In 2010, people of color made up 20% of the nation's total 65 demographic, a figure that will more than double by 2050. Advocates and aging service providers say LGBTQIA+ older adults and older adults of color face significant disparities in health and healthcare access, economic security, housing, employment, community support, and more. It's important that our creative aging work addresses these inequalities and that we ensure that arts programming is accessible for the full span of diverse older adults and is responsive to their needs. We want to also address a question that comes up about terminology with regards to creative aging program participants. At Lifetime, we use the term older adults to denote the 55 and better folks, and these programs are designed for. We find that this term, as opposed to seniors or elderly, a wider term for all kinds of people encompassed in this work, and is often preferable to students themselves. But be sure to ask the folks you work with, how would they like to be referred to? Besides, of course, their own names. People have personal opinions about the best word to describe them and their age. And there are also cultural differences about these terms. We also see people using terminology 55 plus or 55 and better to denote who the class is targeted for. And the term creative aging can be used to indicate without having to spell out a specific age. So what exactly is creative aging? We define creative aging as professionally led instructional arts programs that build skills over time across all the arts disciplines. In short, it's arts education for older adults. Creative aging is not just a concept, but also an emerging field in which a variety of organizations are starting to provide meaningful opportunities for creative expressions through visual, literary, and performing arts programming. These activities are based on scientific research and emphasize the factors crucial for positive aging, learning skills, and building social connections. For this training, we want to clarify from the beginning the particular kind of creative aging program we will be discussing. Lifetime Arts focus is on arts education programs for older adults. There's extraordinary work happening in creative aging in the arts therapies. Much of this happens in clinical or skilled nursing settings. Although both kinds of programs have incredible benefits to participants, the goals of creative aging arts education programs are different from therapeutic programs. Therapeutic programs use arts modality and creative art processes to promote wellness, recovery, and rehabilitation through unique personal interactions. Creative aging arts education programs are instructional arts programs that focus on the older adults as art makers and learners. The creative aging arts education model was in part developed from this creativity and aging study. This study proves that arts engagement is especially good for older adults. Dr. Jean Cohen led the creativity and aging study out of George Washington University in 2006. The study was done over 3 years in New York City, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. In each site, there was a control group of older adults, aged 65 to 103, who did their usual activities, and an intervention group who participated in professionally conducted art and cultural programs. There were 50 participants in both control and intervention groups in all 3 sites. Both groups were well matched in terms of functioning at the start of the study. There was an expected decline in this age group. However, instead, the study produced these results. Those in the intervention group used less medication, had fewer doctor's visits, has less depression, and overall became much more engaged and active in their lives. Cohen and others have discovered that the aging brain is far more plastic than previously believed, and that structured learning, especially through the arts, can improve cognitive functioning and enhance the quality of life. Dr. Cohen identified the 2 most important components of a creative aging arts education program, no matter how it is delivered, in person, online, or other alternative formats. Creative aging programs need to include these 2 main goals. 1, developing mastery of an art form, and 2, forming community through the art-making experience. To define further, mastery of skills is learning an art form in depth and having the opportunity to practice the art and become better at it over time. Social engagement and community building between participants should be connected to the art making and learning. Put simply, did participants learn something new? Did they make a new friend? Because of COVID, most older adults programming moved to virtual platforms. It is important to understand in-person class model, and tomorrow we will spend time thinking about how to adapt the in-person classes to virtual and remote formats. A creative aging arts education program has the following components. It is an art class, visual, performing, literary, or music, that is taught by a professional teaching artist, skilled in developing a sequential arts curriculum. Now, this is a paid professional arts educator, not a volunteer. The class should be at least 8 sessions and is held in sequential weeks, usually once a week. Why? Because the class is sequential in nature. One skill will build upon the other, and the learning and practicing of the skills will grow over time. Each class should be a minimum of 90 minutes to ensure that there is plenty of time to practice the skills taught and have time for the reflection and feedback processes that allow for intentional social engagement opportunities connected to the art making. There also will be a planned culminating event that will be a celebration of the work created over the 8+ weeks and will be shared with other community members. The goal is to have at least 10 people in each class. However, the exact number of maximum students will be dependent upon the art form and should be determined with the input of the teaching artist. Registration is required in creative aging arts education classes to build buy-in and commitment from the students to return from week to week. The classes can be free or fee-based, depending upon the organization and their needs. We should note that if taking place in libraries, programs will generally be free to participants. The class will meet at the same time at the same place every week. The expectation and the goal is that the students will come to every class. Of course, things come up, people get sick, but the goal is that the same group of students will come week after week. Again, this is what the model looks like when people can meet in person. And we will go over in detail tomorrow how to adapt these to remote formats.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jade. We've been looking at the screen and at PowerPoint for a little bit, so I do want to take us through a little exercise that a teaching artist we know uses a lot when we're working on, when they are working on Zoom. It's a 20-20-20 break, and basically what it means is this teaching artist actually does this every 20 minutes, take a break for 20 seconds and look at something that's 20 feet away from them. So encourages all the students to do this too. It's been, you know, an hour 20 technically that we've already all been looking at our screen. So I'm going to go ahead and give us 40 minutes. But what I'm going to ask is I'm standing. I welcome you to stand or sit, be comfortable. Go ahead and take your eyes away from the screen. Ideally, you're able to look at something perhaps out a window that's a good 20 feet away. If not, maybe something in your space that's the furthest distance you can possibly let your eyes refocus. So go ahead and find that object that you're going to look at. Really your eyes focus in. Try to avoid the instinct to look back at your screen. We're really trying to let our eyes focus away at a distance because we spend so much time looking, you know, at this close distance of the screen. And I'm just going to give us a nice 40 seconds. Just breathe naturally, sit comfortably in your chair, and let your eyes just really see and examine this object. So breathing normally. Try to let your face relax. If you're sitting, let your bum relax into the chair. Let your feet be grounded. Great. Just let your eyes gently come back to the screen. So ideally, again, that's done every 20 minutes. Oh, and Katie says the 20-20-20 was recommended to her by an eye doctor as well. So great. So we know it's legit. Able to really take breaks. Thank you for sharing. Great. So I want to just start this next conversation with a conversation with you all. And actually, this came up a little bit in our group. I think Sophia was mentioning something about this. Is there something new that you have been learning or studying as adults? So not in your college years or your K through 12 years. Is there something that you've been learning or studying as an adult? And you can put that, go ahead and put some of those things in the chat. I wondered how do you feel like learning is different for you as an adult? So go ahead and pop into the chat, maybe something that you've been learning or studying. Udarat says aromatherapy. I love it. Udarat, belly dancing, Katie. Hey, awesome. Collage, thanks, Dee. Oh, Alicia's been doing some embroidery. Elaine, Spanish. I love that. The art of writing a picture book. Trying to learn Spanish and how to play the tin whistle. Mary, those are both challenging things. Watercolor painting, Michelle. Sarah, yoga, great. Jen, training a puppy. Yeah, it's a great, complicated thing to learn as an adult. Sarah is working on violin. Bailey, singing performance, wonderful. So I wondered if you might think about this. How is this process of learning, all of these fabulous new things? Dareth already says, it's self-guide that's a big difference. Finding others who can share information, learning by experimenting. Dareth, would you mind unmuting yourself and talking maybe a little bit about that? Just about the difference of learning as an adult. Where's Dareth? Like, I can't see. Where are you? Dareth, are you there? I'd love for you to unmute yourself if you can. Oh, there you go, Dareth. Sorry, doesn't happen. That's totally fine. You already put a great things in the chat. Self-guiding, I think, is a really important. That's a great term. That learning as an adult is much more self-driven, right? You are choosing to engage in this art form. Jonathan says, as an adult, learning has been more challenging due to time constraints. Sure, right, even fitting it into our lives, it can definitely be a challenge. Darrow says, I get to choose. Yes, exactly, that's great. Alicia says, this for me too, Jonathan. Hard to build in structures for learning, totally. So there's definitely challenges. But Rita says, learning has been easier because many of the distractions are gone. Rita, would you mind unmuting yourself? Talking a little bit more about that. Where's Rita?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, you sound great.
Well, I'm right now I'm learning the art of the picture book. And when I was younger and my children were younger and I had so many other obligations, getting them to school on time, helping with homework. I was also married at the time. I'm not married anymore. For me, as an older adult, I've had more time to really focus on what I want to do. And when you're doing what you want to do, not what you're obligated to do or forced to do, somehow it's easier.
That's great. That's wonderful. Yes, yes. Yes, yes to all that. And that sounds really amazing and ideal. Like the ability to really truly focus and thus to really, really deeply follow what you want. You are not taking this class for anybody else but yourself. You're really able to follow your desires. That's great. Learning for the joy of it, Sarah says. Yeah, not focusing on the end result. Mia says, I appreciate the rules and structure of an art form. Well, that's interesting. You're engaging a little differently in the content, maybe of the art form. Bailey says, more self-confidence, less self-editing. I truly believe that to be true. Dee Dee says, finding a place to learn a specific skill, missed structure in going to a place. Dee Dee, if you want to put it in the chat, does that mean remote, like, or is that your, maybe say more about that if you would in the chat. Connie says, a stroke survivor, learning is slower but more empowering. That's great. That's wonderful. And slower is fine, right? It's totally fine. So great. So all of these things we bring up and we talk about because, you know, there are general sort of characteristics of all adult learners, which of course includes older adults. And many of you are also already talking about these things, that you're experiencing these things. Some of you are talking about some new things, and some of you are talking about some challenges too, that I appreciate that we'll talk a little bit about as well. But first, you know, you just might want to think and consider sort of these adult learning principles. And Dee Dee says, I learn better if I have a time and a place. I can't find one for speed reading. I get you. Yeah, making that space for the learning. So these characteristics, of course, may not apply to every adult learner, but they're just some things to keep in mind as you're developing your programs. So as learners, adults are going to vote with their feet. They have very specific goals of what they want to accomplish. They're autonomous, they're self-directed, as we self-guided, as Dareth said. And they're going to choose to be in the class because it lines up with their interests. At the same time, they don't have to be there. They're very busy, they have busy lives, other things they want to be pursuing. So they're going to leave the class, honestly, or just not come back if it doesn't fit what they're looking for. So just something important to keep in mind. That might be a little bit different if you're coming from a K through 12 background where, you know, those kids can't just walk out of the class, right? They're going to be there, whether they're having, you know, a great time or not. Older adults vote with their feet. They'll make it very clear if they're not really getting what they came for. So they also come with a lifetime of experience and past knowledge and past lives and past work experiences, past family experiences. And that's really wonderful. Teaching artists should really encourage older adults, students to bring all of that knowledge and experience to their work. At the same time, some of that experience can also come with some old narratives that might be like, I am not an artist, or I am a bad painter, singer, dancer, or back in school, someone told me I couldn't, you know, draw well enough to be an artist. You know, these are things that might come up. So that can also, you know, it might be a task of a teaching artist to help folks, you know, get over some of these past negative narratives. Sarah says, more experience in life creates more overlap of what you're learning to what you've already learned in life. Yes, completely. Adults are real oriented. They come with an attitude of, if not now, when. They're really serious about their learning. They have clear ideas about what they want to learn and the way that they want to learn it. And they're very practical. And this is sort of related to that last chat comment. You know, they want information. They want to become better at it as they learn, and they want to immediately understand how to apply what they're learning. So an example I like to share is an older adult I knew was taking a guitar class and was really open to learning, was really excited, but made it very clear with the instructor that she also wanted to make sure to learn how to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on the guitar so she could accompany her granddaughter singing, and she also wanted to learn other things, but she definitely wanted to learn that, and that's a small example, but just of a specific goal she wanted to accomplish. And I think a lot of older adults will come to the table with that. And it's important that you find out, what are those things? What are those goals? Is your class going to align with that? How might you be able to adjust? Galia put some important links into the chat to, again, these ideas of adult learning principles. So there's, of course, natural physical changes during aging. We are all aging. We can't get around that fact. We always should assume ability, but of course, there are going to be more issues going to happen with more frequency as people age. So it's really important to just know that these are natural changes and be prepared ahead of time to address them. It's important to remember people are not necessarily going to volunteer this information. They're not necessarily going to tell you when they can't hear an instruction or something that you're putting up on the board they can't really see. Some people will, but many people will not. So it's really important that you handle these issues really proactively. In person, make sure the space is set up to already be accessible. Make sure that your handouts, things you're sharing are super legible. There's also ways in which you'll need to do what we call like non-evasive assessments during the class, which we'll talk about in depth in a moment. And these assessments might look different when working online, but these are moments where you are building into your class check-ins to really make sure that everybody is seeing, hearing, able to participate fully, even if they're not going to maybe actively tell you when they're not. So the natural process of aging, of course, also brings with it a series of losses. Spouses, families move, friends pass away. The need to make new connections is really critical. And that also really leads to an isolation that can lead to that anxiety that Ashton was talking about. That pervasive anxiety is very often connected to social isolation. So important to address that. Of course, concerns about money can come up in this time. And at the same time, we want to introduce a term from the positive aging movement that's rewirement. And this is the idea that, older adults at this time in their life, they really might rethink their hobbies. They might rethink their interests. They might really reevaluate what is important to them. And it might actually, change their thinking about what they want to do with their time. So, older adulthood could be a time fraught with regret and isolation and confusion, but it can also be a time of great opportunity, new adventures and learning. And creative aging programs are really aiming to help older adults experience aging as that more positive process. So keeping in mind some of these older adult, learning considerations and just living considerations in mind when you're designing your creative aging program is really important. At Lifetime, we use the acronym SAFE to denote all the elements of a quality creative aging class that really utilizes these older adult learning principles. So these elements are skills, assessment, feedback, and engaging socially. These definitions are all going to be available in a PDF form on the portal for so that you can review this after today's session. But just to go over it a little bit more in depth. So skills is, of course, the natural process or the natural part of any arts program, learning skills in the art form. But specifically in this model, these skills need to be sequential and experiential. So the idea is that the arc of the program is designed so that skills are really built in a logical way. One skill builds to the next, builds to the next. Also, there needs to be a sense of really building students' artistic literacy, understanding the terms of the art form that they're studying, and really beginning to see themselves as learners and true artists. Assessment is this idea I spoke about before, which is the idea that, which I think is very specific to older adult learning as opposed to the K through 12. You as a teaching artist really need to evaluate your students to tailor the instruction to match the needs of the learners that walked into your class. These are, creative aging programs are generally community classes. They are open to all, and they should be. And what that means is you're going to have a real diversity of entry points, a real diversity of folks' past experience with the art form, with their ability, with their skills. There's just diversity across the board, which is wonderful. But you as a teaching artist then need to build in moments where you're going to assess where each student is And you then would make adjustments to your curriculum or to your lesson plan for that day or to your instruction for just that one activity to make sure that you're addressing the needs of each student. And you'll see some of these things demonstrated in our class tomorrow. Feedback is another point that I think is different than the K through 12, which is the idea of talking about the work, where there needs to be moments really in every class in a creative aging program where folks are talking about their own work, talking about their own process, and talking about each other's work. So of course that needs to be done in a safe way. That needs to be done with those good feedback protocols. The goal needs to be that folks are going to be growing from feedback, not being torn down by criticism. And Galia into the chat, the Liz Lerman critical response protocol, which probably many of you know, which is a very common, protocol and sort of good systems to set up for positive feedback. But you as the teaching artist might have your own. And finally, that social engagement piece. So as Jade talked about before, really in the end, with the creative aging program, you should ask two things, which is, did the student learn something new, and did they make a new friend? And these are really of equal importance in a creative aging program. So this is the idea that intentional social engagement is tied to the art making and learning. So it's not just having a coffee chat after class, that's fine, no problem with that. But it's actually inside of the class, how are you weaving social engagement inside of the activities you're doing? How is it connected to the skills that folks are learning? Are they doing partner projects? Are they sharing in small groups? Like, how can it really be built in to the framework of the class and the design of the class? So one way this kind of can manifest, these things can manifest is sort of in this basic kind of lesson structure, which is very similar through K through 12, but the idea is sort of each element shows up in every class. So here we have the warm-up activity. That's an opportunity for you as the teaching artist to assess everybody. It's also an opportunity for everybody to engage socially. Then you move into the skill building section of the class. That's the skills part of the safe planning. Then you're going to do some sharing of work. So still developing skills. It's also a moment for feedback. It's also a moment for some social engagement. You'll have a moment of reflection. You'll have a moment of closing. Anyway, each of these things can kind of hit one or two of the safe planning elements and really making sure that they're all being met. And finally, facilitation, just in thinking about when you're facilitating for older adults, some tips to keep in mind. Definitely you want to introduce artistic resources. You want to share, wonderful work of artists working working with the skills and in the forum that you're teaching. But you really want to make sure that creative aging classes are not a lecture series. The majority of the class really needs to be spent in the practicing and making of the artwork, trying, failing, trying again. This is going to involve a lot of input from the students. So again, you as a teaching artist are going to come with your plan, you're going to have your set curriculum, but you're going to be constantly checking in, assessing your students, and you're going to be adjusting the plans as you go. So you might end up staying in one lane longer than you thought. You might end up changing because there isn't interest in the particular activity you were trying to introduce that day. You as a teaching artist really need to remain open to making those adjustments. And it's almost like you need to think more that you're in partnership with your students, which I think is in something else that might be a slightly different mindset than the K through 12. And then there needs to be plenty of time to practice new skills. This is what I said before, the idea of trying and failing and trying again, engaging deeply in the art form. That is actually what really builds that plasticity in the brain. That's also why in this model, it is a sequential model over time. This is not just dropping in an occasional engagement with the art form. It's really going deeper and deeper. And that's what really has that positive growth and leads to the positive growth in cognitive health and that social and emotional well-being. So we're going to talk tomorrow, like Jade said, a lot more about how these things show up in remote formats. But just start thinking about that today. During the pandemic, remote formats, whether online or over the phone, were really common. And it really became the challenge of the teaching artist to figure out how do they still do these things when working online or over the phone. I know many of you have probably come up against this already, but how do you ensure that skill building is really happening when you're working remotely? With assessment, in a class, say in Jade's painting class, she in person is able to walk around and look at how people are working. She can't do that online. How is she going to still make sure she's assessing her students? How are you going to make sure that students can really see and hear each other's work for that feedback? How do you make sure to facilitate feedback when you're online and make sure it's still positive and that everybody's contributing? And then social engagement, right? How do you make sure people are building relationships over the screen or over the phone? So anyway, we'll talk some more about that tomorrow, but some things to consider. An example is John Leonim was a Brooklyn Arts Council teaching artist, and he was 1 month into teaching clown and comedy skills to older adults in person at the Jewish Community Center of Greater Coney Island, and then COVID hit. So he had to quick adapt, his curriculum. So he ended up doing, having everyone do physical warm-ups and following each other through the web cameras. And he actually was able to assist folks, pretty well in that and see who could see and hear correctly, who needed some assistance during that class, and that was really important. He constantly collected feedback. How was everybody doing? How is this working for them? He was very open that this was an experiment. So again, he was really working in partnership with his students. And one assignment that they did that I love to talk about is that he had each person, since everyone's working from their own homes, he had them choose an object in their house. So like the couch or their slippers or a pack of playing cards. And as that object had that object rant about their new life in quarantine, the couch is like, yeah, they're sitting on me so much more than usual, And so that was, definitely building skills in comedy and clown, but it also was a real social engagement opportunity. And it also allowed him to really check in with how everybody was doing and how their connections to each other were building. So finally, just want to briefly mention, intergenerational and multi-generational programs, which are opportunities for younger and older students to generate artwork and learn together. We would say multi-generational programming has participants of various ages, and intergenerational is really the idea that you specifically combine two different groups. So maybe you're specifically bringing teenagers and older adults together, or second graders and older adults together. And the focus is really about that connection between the two different groups. So the image here is of a production called Peace for the Ages, which was an intergenerational music program. It was a collaboration between Alive and Kickin', which is a touring vocal ensemble of older adults. And they collaborated with Stages Theater Company. This is all in Minnesota. And Stages is an educational theater program for children and youth. So then COVID hit once they started creating this program. So an in-person, final event wasn't possible. So they transitioned to a performance video, which is pictured here. And later they ended up repeating the performance outdoors under safe COVID protocols. So it was proof that these programs were still able to happen during the pandemic. So there's a couple of sort of best practice ideas that I want to go over in terms of multi-generational or intergenerational. So yeah, Denise, the idea being that, again, multi-generational is really anybody of any age joins the class. Intergenerational is when you're specifically choosing two different age groups to work together. So you're being a little more specific. You're saying maybe just teenagers and just, older adults. So that's the idea there. So the first goal of this kind of work is really to create deeper community connections. So the social engagement part really comes first. And it's important that you're in community in a really safe manner. We need to make sure that there's shared learning happening in both directions, that both groups are really able to equally participate, and that both groups really have I'm talking more intergenerational, I guess, right now, that both groups really have a shared ownership of the process and the creative decisions that are being made. It's important to make sure that your programs are accessible to both groups. So one way that this really shows up is just logistically. Often programs are done in after school, the 3 to 5 p.m. range or 3 to 6 p.m. range, but programs for older adults maybe need to take place not so late in the evening. So you kind of end up in a sort of 3 to 5 p.m. range if the programs can't happen during school. Just important to make sure that, everything about the program is accessible to both groups. And that, really an important goal in these programs is to address ageism, head on, really break down those stereotypes the groups might have about each other. You might start right off and talk about some of those stereotypes. What do the older folks think about the younger? What do the youngers think about the older? It's a tricky conversation, but I think really going, straight at that can help make sure everybody's voices are being heard and really deepen their understanding of each other's experiences. And of course, ageist stereotypes really are broken down by artistic collaboration. So having these groups work together and make something together helps them see each other as artists and makers and not just, younger or older. All right, that was a lot of PowerPoint. Now it's our time to chat. So that was a whole lot of information we threw at you. Some of the days are going to be like that, but I just wanted to open it up to just questions, comments. I don't know, Galia, if there was any that came up so far.
Nothing so far.
Okay. So just as we're here together for our last 15 minutes or so, any questions, any thoughts that come up about what we spoke about? We spoke about sort of the field overall.
Looks like Dee Dee has a hand raised.
Dee, fabulous.
I had a question. What are some of the best practices for dealing with different skill levels?
Within one class?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm getting a feedback. That's a great question. And I think for every teaching artist, it might be a little bit different. Jade, can I throw that to you in your classes? What's some ways you approach it?
So especially on Zoom is, you don't really have the chance to talk to each individual. You walk over to that individual to see what kind of help that person need. So what I usually do is I do make it a little bit more, the class more friendly to all levels. So it might be a little bit easier than in-person class, but I always prepare some materials for some advanced painter. So I will email it to them or put it in chat and I'll say, if you have already done this, you can do this practice. And occasionally, if a couple students really need help, I bring them to breakout rooms and have more chat with them so they won't feel pressure to ask maybe more basic questions in front of the whole group. So that's how I usually do that in my Zoom class. And of course, in-person class is a little easier because you can walk over and see what kind of help the person need.
I think that's thank you, Jade. That's a common practice of teaching artists in this field is sort of to have your A activity and then your B activity and your C activity, meaning if everybody just wants to do the A activity, great. If somebody's looking for a little bit more challenge, then you have the plus this and then the plus that, so that there's some options for folks that might be able to go a little deeper into that particular activity. I think it's then also that's that assessment piece, and especially first couple of classes. I think for me, just a big task is I'm just trying to get to know everybody, and I'm just trying to get clear on where everybody is, so that then after maybe class 2 or 3, I can start more directly designing certain things, certain people, because I understand the different levels that they're at. Does that help, Dee Dee? Yeah, and it's a great thing to keep talking, especially within your art form, with other teaching artists. Cool. I see Mia has a question. How do you recommend addressing ageism with teens and adults without creating a divide? It's a great question, Mia. It shows up a lot of different ways. I spent a lot of time working with a great intergenerational theater company called Roots and Branches. And actually what I was talking about in terms of cliches was something we would do fairly early on with folks. But another thing we would do a lot is have, and this is theater, right? So this is specific to this art form, but have folks play the other age. So I might have a group of older adults and I'd set up maybe an improv scene and I'm like, you're teenagers and you're sitting at the bus, and here I'd have teenagers, we would have established some connections beforehand, but inevitably some, humor would come up around some of these things that was really helpful. And I would also do a lot of specifically pairing an older adult with a teenager in just like a mirror exercise, so that they were mirroring each other physically. And there's so many things that happen in that exercise, but one thing is they start to form a connection that's not necessarily verbal, and they also start to immediately break down some stereotypes, because the younger person might think the older person can't do that physical thing, but actually they can. And the physical person might get, really excited to be in this sort of dance with a younger person. So that's just for theater. I can say some of those examples. I think the first person is really important. How can folks talk about their own lives, their own stories? How can we share in a first person way? So that we're all getting to kind of know each other and build that empathy. Yeah, Annie.
Julie, I just might add on to that another, just thinking about other art forms, it's the act of creating artwork from both participants really breaks down ageism, because then when you talk about the process and your feedback around it, oh, I was challenged by this piece. And then the younger students say, I was too, like they start to build connections around the learning and the art making and the vulnerability that inevitably comes up when you share your artwork. Then you start seeing each other as human beings and something well beyond just, however old or young you may be.
That's great. Thank you, Annie. So Ashley says, when coming up with programming, will you all let us know if what we come up with needs to be adjusted, if it doesn't completely fit, or if you think changes can be made? Well, within this training, we're going to have you fill out, it's really kind of a visioning sheet to just start to think about your program, start to think about what are programs you've already been teaching, maybe for a different population, how can it be adjusted for this population? So we're definitely going to have a moment on day 3 to give feedback and everything about this. I guess I want to say, and maybe this question, Ashley, is for the Arts Commission too. I'm not sure if you want to clarify that in terms of the roster that they're going to be developing.
This is Alicia from the Arts Commission. So here's one thing I'll say right off the bat is, I'm director of arts education, and this falls under arts access, but we're kind of working together. We're super collaborative, right? That's what artists do. This is a new learning journey for me too, but I know that all of us here are always happy to talk and help. So we have artists in, people who work with all the arts disciplines. Michelle and I in arts education are always happy to look at something to talk about, oh, hey, you had this challenge, this isn't working, like what ideas do you have? We love that kind of dialogue and relationship. So, I don't think we ever want anyone who's working on a project or receiving grant funding to feel like they're out on an island all on their own. We're happy to support and help talk through things however we can.
It's really great. It's wonderful to have the support, of the commission. Thanks, Ashley, for that question. Rita asks, is assessment only anecdotal, like personal observation, or do you recommend a formal assessment tool, or both? And Annie, I'll invite you to speak to this too. I think it's really up to you. When we're talking about assessment within the sort of SAFE model, it generally is these moments within class to, within an exercise, maybe to be able to assess folks. But formal surveying is totally great. And I think online, very important. And we'll talk about this tomorrow in terms of, again, it's, as we all know, living on Zoom for the past year and a half, it's so hard, and Jade was speaking to this, to have a one-on-one conversation. You can't just during a break check in with somebody or have somebody come to you with a specific complaint about, what just happened in class, or, we're always in this big room. Even with breakout rooms, we sort of are always in these big rooms. So we do recommend like a quick email survey after the fact, could you see, could you hear, what was your favorite part of class? Do you have any questions, and they're definitely in an in-person setting, could be some kind of format for that, especially if you're starting in a new community, maybe towards the beginning of the class, I would say like some moments, hopefully you'll be working with partners that will have done some kind of assessment with their own folks and be able to give you that information. But, once you're actually in the class, all of those modes, I think, are helpful. What works best for you.
Yeah, I tend to ask for an email list from the organization. So I have the emails from all the individuals. And if they have any concerns, they can contact me, either after the first class or before class, so that I can have a better understanding of what each person needs. So that's something that I don't usually have to do that in-person class, but during the remote classes, I usually do that. That would be more offline communications.
That's great, Jade.
I would just add to, organizationally, we absolutely encourage organizations when they send teaching artists in from the roster or whatever, you know, if they're sort of the liaison for the teaching artist, to absolutely do an assessment at the end, a survey, an evaluation. How did the class go? You know, what did you learn? What would you change? You know, all of those kind of personal evaluations. And we recommend this. I think we might go in this a little bit, but to do at the end of the class series, and then certainly for the culminating event with your audience. Working as an independent contractor, I think those kinds of evaluations will only feed your own sort of growth in terms of your class and what you can do. You know, so again, like Julie says, it's absolutely up to you, but I think the more information you have, the more that you can tell the story and the impact of this class, which ultimately will help you in grant writing and seeking new funding, because you'll have all of this tangible evidence of impact and also tangible evidence of how you might want to change it for the next time, which is just helpful as you move through your courses.
Great. I've got a couple more minutes. If you all have any other questions, we'll have a Q&A tomorrow and a Q&A on Wednesday. So of course, we're here all week, but just wanted to give anybody else an opportunity for anything else right now. All right, cool. Well, I wanted to, most importantly, homework. We've got some homework for y'all. So first we'd like, and all of the homework is available via the Lifetime Arts Service portal. And let's see, Galia, should I go over, I'm gonna go over the homework first, and then Galia will show you the portal. No, here's the portal.
Okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Galia.
All right. There we go. So this is your Lifetime Arts portal. The first thing that you'll do is you'll come to this welcome page and log in, which most of you have probably done since you needed that to access your Zoom link for today's session. Then once you enter the portal, you will come to this homepage, which has all the information of what you need to know, your Zoom link, each day's training materials and homework. You can also scroll down and see it in a linear form. You'll have access to all these videos, all the links and the materials that we've referenced today will also be there. And I will put David's email. He's our program director. And if you have any technical issues or any issues accessing the portal, he will help you. So I will pop that email into the chat right now. And we can go
and actually
on.
just support@lifetimearts.org might even be the easier for everybody.
Oh, okay, great. I will put both of those in the chat then.
Thanks,
okay.
Great. So for tomorrow, thank you, Galia. And yes, if you have any issues with the portal, please go ahead and email. But the homework for tomorrow is that we're going to have you look at a couple of things. One is just to review a document that goes over the safe planning elements that we talked about today. Jonathan's asking you to scroll over the homework button. I think it's in the portal itself, Jonathan. Each day, there's like a link to the day, and like day 2 will have the homework for day 2, if that makes sense. But Galia, could we go back to the slides?
Oh, yes.
Great.
Are you seeing them
Cool.
now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's great. So first, so you're going to look at a document that goes over the safe planning that we just spoke about. There's another document, a PDF document that goes over our Lifetime's recommendations for how to adapt the in-person model to remote, because we are going to be speaking about that some tomorrow. There's a film in there from Aroha Philanthropies, which is also about this transition from in-person creative aging programs to online. So check that out. It's a really beautiful film. And then we'll give you a link in the portal to just our Connect Through Creativity Now campaign, which was something we started last year that was just highlighting organizations and teaching artists that really successfully made that jump from in-person to remote. Tomorrow, just a reminder that you're going to be starting the session. You'll come into this Zoom and pretty much immediately you'll go into a demo class, one with Jade and one with me, where you're going to hop in and really just take part in a class. And then we'll jump in and out and go over some of the those safe elements and how they're showing up in our class. Go ahead and make sure to have a couple of sheets of blank paper, or again, your notebook, but ideally blank paper. So like if your notebook has lines, better to be blank, because if you end up in Jade's group, you're going to need blank paper and some kind of writing utensil, a pen or a pencil for the classes tomorrow. Great, and now Jade is going to lead us through so a couple more questions came into the chat. Sorry, 1 second, Jade. Several links were posted in the chat. Can you review how to save the chat to access them? You can definitely save the chat. However, every link that we've given you today during the training is also in the portal. There's a document in the portal that has all of these links as well. But yeah, if you want to go back over, Galia, how to save the chat.
Yeah, sure. So if you want to save the chat for today's session, you can do so by opening the chat box and clicking on the 3 dots of the bottom right and select Save Chat with this outlined here in this visual. And then the entire chat will be saved to your computer. But as Julie mentioned, all the links will be provided in the portal as well.
And also a link, Rita, to that TED Talk. The full TED Talk is in the as well under the day 1 resources. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Cool. If there's not anything else, Jade, go ahead and close us out here.
Sure. So let's do a quick stretching before we go today. It's been a long day. So let's relax your neck and turn your neck slowly, gently. Feel the tension on the neck. And then we're going to raise our arm, stretch our arms. You can move left to right if you want. Maintain your balance. And then finally, close your eyes and count to 5 to yourself. And don't forget to breathe in and breathe out. Now open your eyes. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Oh yeah, yes, do some nice finger applause. Thank you all so much. We want to let you go right on time. We'll see you tomorrow morning. If you have any last questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, but we will see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye, Elaine. Bye, Ashley. Thank you. Bye, Sarah. Bye, Connie. Bye. Thanks, Sarah.